You are listening to Eastside Radio Podcast.
See, the thing is that when you have Toby Schmitz sitting across the desk from you, it's quite unnerving because Toby Schmitz is one of Australia's great artists. He writes, he acts, he directs, he's on telly, he's on the stage, he's in movies. Have I missed out anything? Can you cook?
Yes.
Can you cook, Toby?
No, but I do work in a second-hand bookshop, if that.
Called Elizabeth?
Called Elizabeth's.
I saw the bag.
Add that to my
but
CV.
now,
Right, okay, but
he's an author.
Yes, an author of a book that I finished in the early hours of this morning, because it's quite a considerable book, actually. It is, oh my God, no wonder it took me a while. It's 360-odd pages. And one of the people he thanks is Richard Cotterill, and another person he thanks is Tim Minchin. So you put those two together and you see that Toby actually has some really good mentors, as it were. Toby, where did this crazy film book come from? It's called The Empress Murders. It's set on a cruise liner.
Yeah.
Excuse me?
It's by Toby Schmitz and it's published by Allen and Unwin.
Yes.
And it's available in good bookshops today.
Right now.
As of this morning.
As of this morning.
Of course,
Toby.
Diana is the first person to have completed it in a matter of hours. It started its life as a play about 20 years ago. I'd been writing quite a few plays, all of them on the fringe or in independent theatre, and with some considerable, I think, public and critical reception. And all I really wanted... Not really, but what I was trying to do was get one of the main stage theatre companies to be interested in one of my plays. And they were becoming increasingly smaller in budget to try and attract them. More and more sort of just middle-class people sitting on a couch with lack of, metaphor. And my then champion at Tamarama Rock Surfers, Leland Keane, down at the Old Fitzroy at the time, who's basically one of only a couple of people who've ever really mentored and championed my plays, and directed a few of them, said, look, why don't you give yourself a break and write something that, without any restriction in your head? And so I went, okay, that's great.
Just because you want to.
Yeah, that's right. So I mean, Tom Stoppard's Rough Crossing is one of my favourite plays, I think, criminally underproduced, but it's huge. It's set on an ocean liner with cast of many, and so that was my first idea. I put in the box. At the time, there was quite a lot of horrible things happening on P&O liners, some terrible headlines that went in the box. I started thinking about Agatha Christie, and I think that The Mousetrap is kind of a perfect clockwork play. And all sorts of things kept going in my ideas box. It wasn't quite a reason to write at that time. I didn't have a kind of an engine. And then I started thinking about post-colonial guilt. I happened to grow up in a time where talking about post-colonialism was sort of in the air in the sort of mid-90s during my university time. Like, it was a big topic. And I was fortunate enough to have university lecturers and so on. And then the real twist was I did a workshop with Edward Albee of Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf fame, which was a great boon. And the big discussion was, what is an Australian story? And I was sort of, having filled in a lot of application grants, I wondered a lot about that as well. And I wondered, could I write an Australian story that wasn't set in the outback where something horrible happens and with a whole lot of men who, are monosyllabic. And Edward Albee said this thing where he was like, you're Australian, you can set it in space a million years from now, and it's an Australian story. That set me free, and then I discovered there was an actual ocean liner in the 20s called the Empress of Australia, and that felt like a pretty obvious but neat metaphor, and I finally started writing. Well, it was a play, and Diana doesn't remember seeing it, despite being a huge supporter of my work over the years. But then, come the pandemic, I thought, if I can't write a novel during this lockdown period, I never will, and I had a plot sort of ready to go, so then I started the process of writing my first novel.
Well, you make it sound so complex and so simple and so
simple.
Yes.
20 years truncated.
Have a COVID and
that's
get a
the
book
thing,
written.
isn't it? I mean, it's so often something pops up and people think, oh, overnight success, but actually it's been 20 long, hard years of tossing it around. You might have heard, I'm so sorry, people, you might have heard that as I was reading it, every time I thought of something, this is not to say this is what it is, but people, I think, like to have a little taste or an idea of what they can expect. And this book is so extraordinary that these are the things that I found in it, although it's completely original as well. Inglourious Bastards, Triangle of Sadness, Mary Poppins, Miss Marple, Poirot, Death on the Nile. I thought about all those things.
What a mix, Di.
Exactly.
How did Mary Poppins pop in?
Because well, anything
Umbrellas,
that Toby does,
fly.
What
It's a
I've noticed,
spoonful of sugar, I think.
yeah,
I was talking
what I've
about.
noticed over the years is that it doesn't matter how anarchic, how wicked, how much he's digging a scalpel into the underbelly, there is a sweetness and a naughtiness to Toby Schmitz's work that is utterly beguiling, which is why we love him, I think. What would you think, Toby?
Well,
he's gone bright red.
Yeah, and a little teary. This book comes out today, and no one's really read it. So to rock
Except
up,
Diana.
yeah, to rock up and to have you say such wonderful things, it really is quite moving. I spot all those things in it too. And I think if you've got a bitter pill, which I think this book has in the centre of it, then you better put some a spoonful of sugar on top of it. It needs to be entertaining as well. I mean, that's what I've learned as an actor more than anything else. That, you know, you want surprise and you want charm and you want wit, so you can stick the shiv in. And I mean, essentially, this book is set on a jazz era ocean liner doing the famous Titanic run, Portsmouth to New York, and it's populated with all sorts of types, cocaine snorting flappers and gangsters and whatever, and hard-working people down in the boiler room. But there's also a sort of a very unhinged serial killer on board, and I wanted to do justice to that concept, not just use it as a crime trope, because I grew up under the shadow of a serial killer in Perth growing up, who was only sort of recently caught, and so that's always played on me.
Yeah, you and Robert Drew. I mean, it's had huge impact on kids who were there at the time.
That's right, and I think it's actually a little more common than not, to be honest. I think these things can come out after the fact.
What, serial murderers?
Yes, that there was someone in your neighbourhood who was disappearing people, and you only learn in retrospect. But it was happening very much on the front pages of my suburb when I was growing up. So I wanted to do justice to that. But also, that's, deep in the dark heart of it, I also wanted to make it entertaining. And so I have a not particularly competent, demoted Scotland Yard detective on board who's not really into his job very much as well.
Well, he does send good radio.
Yeah.
And he gets excellent radio back. I mean, it's the messages between Scotland Yard and the inspector are just divine. And that's another thing I like is, I mean, obviously we have all seen Toby doing grand tragedy, most recently a Hamlet, and it makes me wonder. When it comes to tragedy, which comes first, the laughter or the tragedy? Because there's both always, and you have it here.
I don't think it matters. I think it's chicken and the egg stuff. You can open Hamlet with a slapstick gag, or you can open it with "Who's there? There's a ghost on the parapets." Like, I really don't think, where you choose to end up. You probably wouldn't want to end a Hamlet on a gag, but I'll try anything once. Even if it's just for originality. But yeah, it's a very odd, maybe even non-existent tragedy that doesn't have gags in it. And
I
vice
can't
versa.
think of one. I
And
can't
vice
think.
versa.
Yes.
I think if you think about, I don't know, like one of the great rom-coms, Much Ado About Nothing, there's some serious tear-shedding moments in there. Well, there should be.
It's also why I was interested to see. I mean, you can see I got right to the end because of Richard Cotterill. I mean, Richard Cotterill is one of the greatest directors of comedy, which means that he's one of the greatest understanders of tragedy and the depth of the human condition in order to be able to make superlative comedy.
Yes.
So for him to be one of your guiding lights.
Yeah, I sent him early manuscripts, and he had wonderful notes and has kept his support up to this day. So he needed a tip of the hat at the end. Crumbs, I wasn't going to write whatever they call it, the end acknowledgements or thank yous, and the publishers, Alan and were like, no, you do that, and loved ones were like, no, that's a thing. I was like, really?
Yeah.
Can't I just let the story spill out and leave people kind of flung out into space without returning to sort of the real world? But it was real pressure applied to me, and so I had to...
That's actually very interesting,
Yeah.
Toby, that they really
It was like,
insisted
no, this is
that
a
you
real thing these
acknowledge
days
it.
that you
Yep.
do.
I don't think it's these days. I think it's like when it's something similar to when a show finishes, and very, very rarely the cast goes off, people clap, and that's it, and they don't come back.
Yes.
And it means that people aren't allowed to acknowledge their participation and their interest.
I think you're completely right. I think in my younger punk days, I was always, saying, "What about no curtain call?" But you're right. There needs to be an acknowledgement of form in a way.
It's part of the contract.
Yes.
And as is this, quite frankly, it really, really is.
And I came round to totally understanding and agreeing. It was just the horror was having to whittle down my list of people I wanted to thank. and
Indeed,
acknowledge.
make the selection.
Yeah, it was
Down to
horrible.
two.
Yes.
Yeah. Listen, folk, we are talking to Toby Schmitz, who on this very day has a book published called The Empress Murders, out by Alan Unwin, and as we say, available in all good bookshops. But the most important thing to know is that we're talking to Toby Schmitz, who we've all seen, as Diana's already mentioned, on screen, television and wherever.
Everywhere else.
But actually we're now seeing his name on the cover of a book, which he's discussing with us.
And the
little
little tag is "Prepare for a rough crossing," and that's. I mean, I must say, Toby, I did wonder. Well, I know you've spent time in South Africa because you filmed there. So
That's right, for 4 years. Yeah.
4 years was it? Good God!
Yeah.
And so that I don't want to tell people anything about it because it is a delicious journey. But I thought, okay, so he got all that from there probably. The ship. Have you spent much time on cruise liners?
No, once I've never been on one, but once I decided to set it on a ship that did actually even exist, I got deep into my research, and I know that there's going to be some ship enthusiasts out there who are going to take me to task because I've actually wildly redesigned the interior of the Empress of Australia to suit my needs.
You'll find somebody who's
That's
been on
right.
it.
So I'm glad that I at least got halfway in convincing you that I know about ships. But I did a lot of research about this particular boat, ocean liners at the time, and their history. I mean, they were a really new invention by the time of the Jazz Weimar era. Most of them were refashioned troop ships from the First World War, and then they started dealing in migrants straight after the First World War, and then America stopped taking anyone through Ellis Island that didn't have a lot of money on them. And so all these ocean liner, all these ships and shipping companies had to pivot quickly. And what happened was, of course, the rise of a tourist class, moneyed mid-20s people. So that's where the idea sort of just happened, and rapidly, that these, what used to be sort of, passenger ships, quickly turned into luxury floating hotels. I mean, of course, we had the Titanic before the First World War, but it was really a niche kind of travelling thing. It became accessible suddenly to the middle class in the mid-20s.
Isn't that interesting, actually, about tourism as an industry? Because they didn't used to be tourism, and then there were trains, and so people could go places on trains for fun. Yeah. And then there was Europe opened up with package tours. I mean, this is in the Northern Hemisphere. All of those things. One little thing clicked on, and changed everything. And suddenly a whole class of people were able to take holidays. And there was the grandness of those big ocean liners.
And it all happened so fast, that rise. People were more moneyed. And the sort of the dark flip side of the coin is that exuberance that after the Great War, that shall never happen again. And the bright young things and moneyed and a rise of a class threw us headlong quite quickly into the horror of the Holocaust.
Yes. Well, that's one of the things that I was struck by. You said you had a lecturer who put the Holocaust and Auschwitz and Hiroshima together.
Yeah, he said you must learn to think about Auschwitz and Hiroshima in the same sentence.
And that is such an important thing.
Yeah.
And it especially now when the rise of anti-Semitism, authoritarianism, all the other isms that are happening for us, the Far East, which is America, is just. It's extraordinary that it's just round and round and round and round, and even though this book is it's an entertainment, but it is huge. There's a huge amount in it that makes I kept going, oh, I hadn't thought of that, and the people in it, they're amazing, Suze. They are.
I can't wait. Now you've finished it, I can grab it.
Some of them you want to get murdered.
Yes, you certainly do. And some, yeah, absolutely.
That hideous. Toby.
And nobody is without many flaws. But it's also the situations that they're in. I mean, the ship is not just the ship. The ship is a metaphor for all manner of things. So it's fabulously entertaining, but. And there is so much more to it than that. I don't think it's a play, it's a movie. It's Netflix, actually.
Interestingly, years ago, my chum Timmy Minchin, who's supplied a wonderful quote on the front cover, he said...
I noticed.
Yeah, he said... I said, I'm thinking I've written a screen treatment for an 8-part standalone miniseries. And he said, he's one of the savviest of people when it comes to business acumen alongside entertainment. He said, unfortunately, you're going to have to write the novel first and then get it optioned, and then they'll turn it into a series.
It's absolutely true. It is absolutely true. Yes. Well, now that it's out there, and lazy film types can actually have someone read it for them, which I think is the way it goes. I mean, it would make a fantastic 10-part series. It really, really would.
And you have that in the back of your mind, Toby Schmitz, don't you?
Probably in the front these days, yes.
That's right. In my back pocket.
Yes.
Yeah.
But, Toby, now that, okay, this is done, it's out today, there's nothing more you can do to it right now. Yeah. So what are you up to?
I'm about to start rehearsing, and I've been looking forward to it for a long time, stage treatment of Max Porter's Grief is the Thing with Feathers at Belvoir, Simon Phillips directing.
Oh, how brilliant.
And Nick Schleeper on lights. I mean, I've been looking forward to it for years, and it's been a while since I've been on stage, apart from my outing earlier this year in Hamlet Camp. Which
was wonderful, Toby, I have to tell you.
Thank you.
The three of you were amazing.
Oh, cheers. And I really enjoyed your crit on it, Di, as
See stage noise.
Did I see it? Did I remember?
We did.
Yeah, you said that.
We did.
Oh, marvellous.
But as often is the case, you got it. I thought the thing to be celebrated and noted about it was how quickly we got it up. That you could tell that it was a seat of your pants kind of thing. And it was a great memory, I thought, about... this was a little show that was on at Carriage Works, listeners, earlier in the year here in Sydney. And is that sometimes you don't need a theatre company or even a director. Like, actors can do things. They can direct,
themselves.
They can write, and they can conjure something out of dust.
Well, Toby, if they're pretty smart, you need three pretty good ones, I think, probably, which we did have.
They can eat and chew gum. I mean, read and chew gum or whatever it is at the same time. Most people don't realise.
So when does this, what is it, at Belvoir?
Yeah, Grief is the Thing with Feathers.
Grief is the Thing with Feathers.
It's a great title, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes.
Coming up in...
Well, sometime in the next few months.
Toby.
It really isn't...
around September, October, something like that. I see.
It's not my best point.
Well, we'll be definitely...
Yes.
No.
Someone calls me up and tells me where to be. Even this morning, someone said, "You realise you are coming in to talk with these guys this morning?" I said, "Of course I
Do.
He says, wildly stripping off his PJs. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I must say, I did wonder whether to remind you, but then, indeed. Now, okay, so stage in a minute.
Yeah.
Any ambition? Well, not ambitions, but
Yes.
Was this so?
Empress Murders.
How was this to write? Do you fancy it again, or are you going to stick to script writing?
I have another couple boiling away, and I love Martin Amis as a novelist. He's one of my favourites, and he in his canon, he's always challenging for himself. You can tell what a novel might be. So I've got another one boiling away, and it's sort of set in the 90s in a private boys' school. And that's all I got at the moment. But it's sort of Ferris Bueller's meets, I don't know, Dead Poets meets.
Right.
Something or other.
Toby Schmitz.
Yeah.
Yes, which basically means anything can happen,
That's right.
actually.
Yeah.
And it will be funny and it will be shocking and, yes, all of those things, I think. So what do you call yourself these days, if anything, apart from Toby Schmitz?
Anything, just not late for breakfast.
It's, no, but is there something whereby you... Are you going in a direction, or are you still...
I don't think about it until you're forced to fill in a form come voting time or whatever,
Yes.
I love that you said artist. I think that it should be brandished proudly these days, but it's a strange country and people start to get a bit tired of slashers, actor / writer / director. Even my brain starts to turn off when I see that after someone's name. I sort of don't care. Barry Humphries used to famously, when you had to put your occupation on your passport, just had Dada.
And got away with it.
Yeah.
Well, not least because anybody reading it probably wouldn't have had a clue what he meant, actually.
And what did you do in the war? Dada is a great line of Tom Stoppard.
Oh God, yes. Well, that's what Barry Humphries did do, didn't he? Basically. All right. So Barry Humphries, that's another person to sort of put behind you as
a huge inspiration for me. Not much theatre came to Perth in the 80s when I was growing up, but I remember seeing an Edna show. And I can remember it now. Like, I've got goosebumps now thinking about it. I remember leaning forward, from up in the stalls, and going, "I'm born." Like, I don't know what he is doing, but I want in. Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask you, Toby Schmitz, what inspired you and at what sort of age? So you would have seen Barry Humphries as Edna, presumably first?
Yeah, that's right. And then Sandy Stone.
What sort of age were you?
About 11, something
yeah.
like that. I remember a slightly earlier experience of my grandmother taking me to see an independent production of Under Milkwood. And I remember very little about it, except that the set in a little black box somewhere in Perth, I had the village painted in a trompe-l'oeil around it, but all the windows were painted with iridescent paint, so when it turned into night, they all glowed. I remember going, well, I'm in. I want in on this magic trick. My father used to direct theatre before I was born.
Oh, really? Right. So it's in the blood, as it were. Yeah.
Indeed.
I mean, it's so important, isn't it? And I noticed, given that we're at East Side Radio, which is our listeners know in Paddington, I noticed with great pride that Paddington School, just up the road, it has a large poster drawing attention to parents that they have a drama school. And, I mean, that is the age, isn't it? You were 11.
Yeah.
That is the age to be introduced to theatre, opera, whatever it is.
Yeah. And this is an era, Suze, when drama is being dropped by schools. So the fact that Paddo Public is doing it is just fantastic.
It's remarkable, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
But I remember it not being examinable when I was going through school. And then there was a great moment when, it could be part of your Year 12 examinations was doing drama. Hard to mark and score.
Yeah.
But to hear that it's now dropping off again is kind of, oh God, when will the pendulum swing back?
Well, one almost gives up because with this election and all the rubbish they're talking about, but there is a word education somewhere slipping in there. But I mean, essentially so much seems to be dropped because there's no money.
Yeah, that's right. But the great thing about theatre, I totally understand.
But actually...
Theatre, you can get up anywhere.
Yes, that's
Milk
what I'm
breaks
saying.
With
you
mates
can,
in the lunch break.
You don't need to be paying huge sums of money. just driven like presumably your father was to
I
direct.
remember Neil Armfield years ago saying, look, the currency of theatre is ego, because it sure as hell isn't money.
There we
It's
are.
absolutely true. It's absolutely true.
Ego in a good sense of the word as well.
But there was a time, not that long ago, in Melbourne, there was the $5 Theatre Company, which basically they put on shows at lunchtime in the city, so that city workers could go $5.
Yeah.
And the same thing happened here in Sydney in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah, and down at the New Theatre in the 30s in Newtown. So most of the plays slightly humorless communist screeds, but
But it was theatre.
You could go see a play.
Yes.
Yes, you could have someone waving a thing telling you where you were. Yeah, but as you say, it's that Neil. He's dead right. Actually, it is dead right.
It took me years to get my head around that concept, because I just thought ego was a negative, just a wholly negative word. But no, it is. You've got to believe to put on that play in your lunch break with milk crates, and people laugh at you and go and so this is not a career. But you've got to kind of have some front. You've got to have some balls about it.
But actually, it also comes back to this very fine cover that I'm stroking here, people, of the Empress Murders, because there has to be that kind of belief as well, that you can sit down with a notebook at a screen and say and start writing, and it turns into something like that, or indeed the other things you do. You have to have a confidence and a belief, because it sure as hell gets knocked out of you so easily in this world we live in. You know, when you're going to get a proper job, that sort of thing. You're writing a book. Oh, yeah, right. So thank God that you are courageous, Toby Schmitz.
The most important thing, though, I cannot emphasise it more and more in my own experience, is to be introduced to drama, theatre, music at a really early age.
Cannot agree more.
Because if you leave
Absolutely.
it till you've left school, quite people don't find it. And we know that by going to theatre and indeed music, opera, concerts, and you see this vast array of grey or white hair.
Yes.
And we've got to get the kids in.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Indeed.
Well, you're doing your best, Toby.
Yeah, and everybody, I really, really recommend The Empress Murders by Toby Schmitz. It's the subtitle is Prepare for a Rough Crossing. And Tim Minchin says on the cover, a tense and claustrophobic mystery told with startling wit. He's quite right. It's from Alan Unwin. It is out today, and give it to somebody
But read it first.
but don't
Or buy
give
two
the
copies.
Dog-eared copy. Buy two. And Toby, we look forward to seeing you under the tutelage of Simon Phillips later in the year at some point.
I look forward to seeing you guys.
And thank you so much for taking the trouble to come in. It's just lovely to see you.
Not at all.
It is actually.
huge shot of the arm for me.
It's so good to have, well, you particularly, but to have a studio interview. Wonderful. Thank you, Toby.
Bless you.
Yep. And now, as long as I've got
You have been
my-
listening to Eastside Radio Podcast. For selections of more enjoyable content like this, visit our website, eastsidefm.org, and click on Podcast.